Okay, so welcome to the goals and habits portion of this lecture. I think this might be debatably one of the most important components and topics, goals and habits in particular, as far as truly finding and making change in our behaviors. And I think this goes back to the idea of our stages of change model, and when we get to the termination point where really our behavior doesn't end there, the change process might, but the reason for that is we move into a point where we hit automation within our behaviors. And another way of saying that is things become habit. So ultimately, while having a goal is a good, important start, it kind of like initiates movement towards change and initiates us to have something closer in our capacity to move towards. At the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is embody and become this kind of constellation of habits that we've developed for ourselves that reflect who we want to be as people. So another way of saying that is we kind of progress this constellation of habits to present itself as actions and behaviors that we want to engage in, let's say for better wellness and health. And that becomes part of our identity because that's just our actions. That's who we are and how we go and interact with the world. We're going to dive into that a little bit more when we get to the last component, which is wellness for life. But let's dive into goals and habits. Now, it might be a bit of a surprise, but I'm not going to spend too much time on goals. And it's largely because, again, like I said, it's an initial kind of starting point, and there's lots of information on goals and goal setting out there. However, habits will be a main focus and something to really dive into that we're going to use as our primary platform for when you go to do your wellness journaling, okay, and that assignment. Okay, so again, we spoke about this earlier, but just to reiterate it because it is a good point, it's always good to get a baseline measure or assessment or reflection of where you're at or where a client is at before starting to move forward on to make some sort of change. A lot of this will come into play when we're developing our SMART goal, which we'll chat about next. But we want to make sure that these goals are moving us in a direction we want, but also within reach, right? We don't want to just set a goal and have that so far off from maybe where we're starting at. Makes it feel a little unattainable. And that being said, oftentimes people can make small changes to what they already do to improve their wellness. And in order to do that, you need to start at the start where you're currently at. And a lot of the times, I think a common question for many people looking to improve their health and wellness is questions about nutrition. Oftentimes, most thorough or thoughtful or critical healthcare practitioners that deal with nutrition will always get somebody to do nutrition log or journal for a certain amount of time to try to get a snapshot of where these people are starting at and then progressing from there. Again, there isn't really one size fits all when it comes to nutrition. And so being able to correctly kind of identify where there's small changes to move people towards their goals is definitely the easier approach. Okay, so once you have that information, once you've figured out what activities are going on, what kind of precipitated that, and as we'll see with habits, what cues on these habits or these actions to occur, you can start tackling changes. So let's say you do that, you found where you want to change, and we get onto our actual goal setting. More specifically, we're talking about having a goal that's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific. So what do we mean by this? Well, being specific means when we're talking about, let's just say, increasing the amount of exercise we do, not saying just that, just increasing exercise, but being more detailed in and around what that means. So when we're forming kind of our habit intention statement or our endpoint of our goal, we want to say things like, I want to walk 30 minutes every day at 7 p.m. once I get home from work. And so the more details, the more specific, both to the thing you want to do, but as well as the cues that kind of happen before and the rewards that happen after, the more likely you are to implement and achieve that goal. Okay. The next part is it needs to be measurable. And this can take a few different forms, but ultimately, if it's something that can objectively be measured, that's great. And you need to state how you want to measure it. So for example, let's keep on with this walking goal. So to make sure I can measure that, I'm going to use a fitness watch, and it's going to track. And so it's going to automatically upload to Strava, which is like an activity app or program, and or something like Training Peaks. And I'll be able to see, on, my 5 days out of seven days in a week, that I was able to do half hour or more of walking. So it is definitely measurable. Is it attainable? Well, let's say I kind of reflected and figured I'm already walking 2, maybe 3 times a week. I looked at my schedule. I saw that, I can make time on 2 to 3 more days a week to be able to do this. So yeah, it seems attainable. And just a note at this point too, as a healthcare professional or someone working in the health field or working with people in general, if someone is very new to a certain area of wellness, let's say exercise, for example, most people have the toughest time assessing accurately what is attainable for them because they just don't know. They don't have enough experience. They don't know what is attainable as far as who they are as individuals. They might see things out in different media outlets and on the web and stuff, but again, it's hard for them to dial this in. So again, as someone with experience and knowledge, this is a place you can really help, and as well as with the next point, being realistic. So I think the last 3, the art of SMART, so attainable, realistic, and time specific, it is a bit of an art in the sense that you need some prior knowledge and experience with change and goal setting for a particular continuum or dimension of wellness. Again, sticking with exercise or physical activity. Again, a professional can kind of assess and gauge and give some indication as to what they think that is. And the longer you work with an individual, a client or whomever, patient, you get a better idea what they are capable of, but ultimately you can kind of broadly apply your knowledge. So realistic is, again, based off of the goal's attainability and the time frame in which it's happening. Is it realistic that the individual you're working with actually gets these goals, right? And the last but not least, for time specific, is setting a specific time frame to achieve the goal. So, sometime, in the next year, that's a pretty broad goal. Being a bit more specific, being like in 3 months, by this date, achieving the goal. And a lot of the times, the shorter duration, the time period, the more likely something can be achieved if the goal is set for that time frame. So we'll get to this when we talk about habits and a good goal for that. But usually having something a little bit more, let's say, attainable and realistic is a great place to start, which usually means you have a little bit of a shorter time period to kind of get that rolling. Obviously, as you get more and more proficient or experienced in an area, you can make the goals a bit more longer term and wider scope that way. That would be a suggestion anyway for that. Good. Okay. Now there's one more thing that we can do to kind of help with adherence. So we have this goal, we decided it's a good fit for us, and it's realistic, we can measure, attainable, it's very clear, it's very specific about what we're trying to do. What we can do is we can also generate something called a personal or a goal contract. Now there's been quite a bit of research behind this where if in the context of academic integrity, so plagiarism, cheating, etc., as well as health and fitness. So sticking to exercise or nutrition plans and goals. These actually work quite good. It on the surface and initially feels a little hokey, I feel sometimes, but if you actually go through the process and go through with a professional or a teacher or whatever, it works quite well for quite a few people. And usually these are people that have a bit more of an obliger tendency. So people that like meeting other people's expectations, as well as those that are a bit more what's called like a questioner kind of tendency, where they really like to meet their own expectations as well. So again, there's a very large part of the population where this works for. And here's what it looks like, just to give a little bit more background. So you have this goal and you write it down and you put it in kind of the context of a contract. And you sit down with either like, if you are, say, like a kinesiologist or a trainer or something like that, and you're trying to help someone with their fitness, you sit down with this individual and you say, do you agree to these terms that on the specific date at the specific time, you're going to do this measurable goal in this time frame, and will you do this? And they go, yes, I will do this. And then you say, sign here, date it. You put it in their folder and you're like, we are going to return to this on that day or when you achieve this goal, whatever makes most sense. And we'll check this off and we'll like celebrate because this is what it is. And so on the point of celebration and reward, there's kind of on some times a reward and or punishment kind of worked into this, or a consequence, I guess, would be a better term for that instead of punishment. But it doesn't even necessarily need to have that. And what ends up happening is there's this higher level of accountability that gets queued up in people. And what I've seen work well is just that, And again, studies have supported this in different contexts. So institutions like universities getting students to sign agreement contracts saying that they will not engage in plagiarism. If you want an example of one, you can look in your syllabus in regards to AI use. But yeah, this works well for personal fitness and stuff. So having that accountability and writing it down in a contract-like format can definitely help. Great. So that's kind of our goals and some structure we can have for that. There's also personal contract we can do. And these are kind of classic approaches to behavior change, and at least initially having some sort of shorter term goal to reach towards. But again, most of the focus for hopefully the health and wellness industry is moving towards wellness versus just short-term goal attainment, right? Really, we want individuals engaging in activity that all this wellness and health-related activities and behaviors end up becoming habit. Okay. Again, just to frame things, when people engage in habit or habitual behaviors, this is automated. This doesn't require a lot of thought. It becomes part of their identity. And again, when actions and behaviors become part of someone's identity, that is real change. There's no more thought energy that needs to go into these things. Willpower isn't really necessary. It's just a thing people do. It doesn't require any extra cognitive energy to be able to complete these activities. Motivation isn't really needed when it's just automatic that you wake up and get ready, put on your running shoes, and head out for a run 3 days of the week. If it's just Monday, you just run in the morning. That's just what you do. So that would be an indication of low cognitive load to complete a habitual task. Okay, so I think to frame this and set this up well, I've pulled much of this from one particular book. So there's a book called Atomic Habits, and it's written by James Clear. Now, the one thing I really appreciate about this author is it's not just his opinion and perspective on things that he's just decided to package together in a very sellable way in order to sell 15 million copies of a book. That might have been part of the motivation, but what I most appreciate about this author and his formation of this book and these concepts is most all of it, if not all of it, is pulled from other people, in particular research, and not just research in one area. And this is a challenge for academia, I think, at times, maybe less so today than in the past, but definitely still is prevalent, that different areas of study get very siloed. So they're quite separate a lot of the time, even though, as we know in kinesiology, that many areas of the body is interrelated. The way our brains work influence our bodies. Our emotional states affect our visceral physical selves, and there's a lot of interrelatedness between our body systems. So what James Clear did was essentially look at all these different areas of study. For example, neurobiology, psychology, behavior change management in epidemiology, and a number of different areas, and just kind of compiled it and distilled it. And so two things with that. One, it is very much evidence-based, a lot of these points. But two, it's also kind of repackaged, and I think he did a good job of this. This was his input to kind of make it accessible and actionable. Okay, so if I did have a book recommendation, this would be the one. But that being said, I'm also kind of distilling it down for you here in another way that focuses more on the actionable aspects of what's covered in the book. But I highly suggest this as a read. So that's kind of the context and selling point for this. And to give more relevance and backing to it, a lot of these concepts I've come across through different studies and different times. So whether it's psychology, or my biology work, or kinesiology studies, or whatever, a lot of these different concepts have come up in different ways. And again, it's just kind of repackaged in a real applicable way. So right, without further ado, we're going to cover 5 main areas with a little bit of background to start us off. So the more actionable things to apply when we're trying to build and create new, let's say, behaviors in general, or habits, is the 4 laws of behavior change, habit stacking, environment design, the 2-minute rule, and identity-based habits. And I've mentioned that a few times already, so that point should feel familiar once we get there. Okay, before we kind of dive into those 5 main points, I think it's important to understand a little bit more what a habit is and how it's formed. So the first step is to kind of look at what's called the habit loop. And you're going to be diving into these when you do your journaling and your lifestyle change project or assignment. So we start off with some sort of a cue. And you can kind of see that up here in the top left quadrant, right? So we start off with a cue. That can be something in the environment, or something internally. And essentially what that does is creates a stimuli that our body is going to react to. So we have the stimuli, and then we get into this mode where our body perceives it and interprets it. So once we see an external cue of some sort and we process that, we put meaning to it. And that meaning typically will have a bit of a craving related to it. So some need that's happening within us in a psychological way that we want to fulfill. Okay? So we have some sort of need that needs fulfilling. Then, based off of that need, we go to create and interact with a response for that. So we have an action which creates a fulfillment of that need that the craving existed within that craving. Once we perform an action to fill that need, we are then typically rewarded for that. And that reward isn't like another extra step necessarily. That reward is inherently satisfying the craving. And so, again, once we have this cue, this need, an action to fulfill the need, and a rewarded behavior for fulfilling that need, that reinforces the cue with that subsequent behavior. Okay, so we kind of get this loop happening. Okay. All right, let's look at some actual examples, and I'll probably just do one, but I think there's 3 listed here. So here in the kind of initial problem phase, we have our cue and craving. So let's look at, I think an interesting one's your phone buzzes with a new text message. So you get this our phone buzz, vibrate. Okay. All of a sudden that initiates this craving in us. Okay. I want to know who that was. Who's messaging me right now? Or if it's ringing, who's calling me? Who calls anymore, right? So I get this craving of curiosity, and I have a need that I want to find out. So that's my craving. So my response is to grab my phone and look at it, see who sent me a message and what they had to say. So that's my action. And then my reward is I feel satisfied, my curiosity is solved, I know who sent me a message, I know what they had to say. Maybe it was junk, spam or something like that. I was like, okay, put it away. But at least that reward is made. But here's the kicker again for forming a habit is because I felt rewarded and my need or my craving was satisfied, next time my phone buzzes, I'll want to do that again. That whole pattern, right? I think maybe I'll just do one more. So again, when I wake up, I pick the ones that resonate, I guess, with me most. I wake up, right? That's the cue. So an external cue is waking up, maybe because of my alarm, okay? My craving is I want to feel more alert. I'm kind of groggy and stuff, and likely also because I'm a habitual coffee drinker. So in the mornings, because I haven't had any caffeine, I'm even in a more groggy state than if I didn't drink caffeine regularly. So what do? Well, that craving is to feel more alert. So I drink a cup of coffee, and sure enough, I'm rewarded. And I'm actually kind of double rewarded here, both through psychoneuromotor reward system, but also through feeling more alert. So that craving was satisfied, that need was satisfied. So does that reinforce the next time that I wake up that I want to have a coffee, especially if that craving is present, that I want to feel more alert? Absolutely. Okay. So again, this is just a habit loop and kind of that base formation that occurs. And how a lot of our behaviors, if not most all of them that are habitual, get formed, right? Right. And so if we're looking for ways on how to create a good habit, we have 4 ways that we can intervene at each of these steps to create a good habit. Okay, so we got these tips or tricks that we can kind of integrate into this to help us out. So at the cue stage, we can make our new habit obvious. At our craving stage, so when we have this need, we need to make the new habit more attractive than the old one. So the craving part, we need to have it more appealing to than our craving. The third, in our response, our action, we need to make it easy. And then our 4th law, in our rewarding, we need to make this new habit as satisfying or more satisfying than the old reward that we used to get. Okay. To get rid of a bad habit, the idea is you just inverse all of these, So with an old habit, instead of making obvious, you got to make it hard to get to. If our craving, instead of making the old habit look appealing, we need to make it look unappealing. Our response, instead of making it easy, we have to make it harder to do as far as our action. And the last reward would be making it satisfying. And we'll go through each of these points in a little bit more detail, but to just kind of cover the gist of it now, if we're talking about fruits and vegetables, again, to make it obvious, we leave it out very obviously, easy to grab, because it's this nice bowl of fruits and vegetables maybe that's easy to snack, and we found it satisfying because, well, believe it or not, eating fruits and vegetables are typically satisfying. We just aren't maybe attenuated to that habit quite yet. The opposite would be, okay, well, if I want to get rid of snacking on maybe unideal food or junk food, or foods that are not quite as nutritiously dense as fruits and vegetables, well, I'm going to take those foods and I'm going to hide them way in the back of my cupboard. I might not even buy them, so that's going to make it very challenging to get. I'm not going to see it in my house, so it's definitely not obviously there. And I'm going to try to make it as unappealing in my mind and not very satisfying to leave the house and have to go get snacks or treat food, right? Just as an example. Okay, so let's again look at the 4 laws of behavior change. Again, that's what we just went over when we're talking about these 4 things here. So making it specific, we want to find cues that will make it very obvious and specific. So this is much like the first part of your SMART goal, right? The more specific we can get, the more detailed we get, the better. We're going to look how we can tie these specifics into our habit stacking and how that can be helpful there. So we're going to come back to kind of this part. So again, the more detailed, the better. We make it attractive by making these habits enjoyable or desirable. There's 2 tricks to this. 1 is pairing it with something that we find enjoyable, and 2 is visualizing the benefits that we get after. So the first one would be, let's go with walking or jogging. Say you want to start jogging. Maybe you really enjoy listening to music or podcasts or something like that, or maybe even watching TV. So what we can do is we can pair those activities with running. If you want to watch TV, jog on a treadmill while watching TV. If you like music or podcasts, you can go outside for a jog and listen to these things. So we're pairing something you already find enjoying with an activity that is something new, a new habit you want to build. Similarly with visualizing. So this one's a little trickier and requires a little bit more cognitive energy, but it does work really well. So even if you are like partial way through forming a new habit, in particular like something like exercise, what helps to get a little extra motivation and or make it more attractive to want to engage in is by visualizing how good you'll feel when you complete the activity. Oftentimes, again, if you're not feeling like you want to go exercise, a lot of the times it's because your current visceral and emotional state is one that just is a little lethargic, or maybe not quite in a place that you would associate with exercise. But as soon as you start remembering how good you feel once you're done exercising, even light exercise, you're like, oh wow, I feel way better once I've completed a 10-minute jog, even a light jog. Okay, well, maybe I'll do that. I'll just go out for a 5-minute jog. I know I'll feel better after. And that's one way you can make it attractive, is visualizing that. Okay. And again, this can go back to the 4 S's of motivation to make it more attractive. You can visualize certain aspects of those 4, whichever seem most appealing to you. Making a habit easy. So this again helps with the action part, or our response to our habit loop. So when we reduce complexities, we make it easier to actually act. Okay, so a lot of the time, if our action or response to a certain habit seems really difficult, that's a little demotivating, and I would say just makes it more of a barrier to actually complete the task. Whereas if we make something easy for ourselves, it's more likely that our response or our new habit is going to be formed. I think one of the most helpful ones that I've used with clients before, there's 2 of them, but one is ensuring that the night before you have a workout planned or a training session planned, you pack your bag and have it set by your bedroom door, like a gym bag. It's maybe to people that do that regularly, that doesn't seem like a groundbreaking idea, but for many people, that's a bit of a barrier. It's like time. Oh, I don't have enough time to get to the gym, because that means I need time to pack a bag and get all my gym clothes ready. And, the morning when I'm getting ready, I don't know when I'm going to do that. I mean, I wake up a bit later. I only have like 5 minutes to get ready or 20 minutes to get ready for work or whatever. So it's this time thing. Well, okay, well, what about the night before? As a suggestion, like, why don't get your stuff ready then? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess I do have time just before bed. So yeah, I could do that. And so again, it's just making it easy so that when they wake up, it's not a time barrier anymore. You can just simply grab your gym bag and go. The other thing that I've done with this is people's routes home. I say, even if you don't think you have time to come into a gym for your own workout, at least make the route past the gym before you go home on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, let's say. And and of course, most of the time when people are already with like intention driving past the gym, they're like, well, if I have to drive past the gym to get home, well, I'm here, I have my stuff, I might as well go in for a workout. So again, it just makes that action a little bit easier. And then the last but not least is making it satisfying. So again, ensuring that we're rewarded for our good habit or our new habit that we're trying to build. So we choose something after that would really make it enjoyable. It can be everything from like a nice healthy breakfast to a warm shower, which people find rewarding. I think three important things here with this point would be, yes, make sure it's immediate after the action. So as soon as you're done your new habit, you should get rewarded, and make it enjoyable. I think the other thing to mention here is like ensure that the reward activity isn't detrimental to your progress with health and wellness. So for example, it's not fantastic if it's always food related as a reward. It can be, some people swear by just like having a small bit of chocolate here and there, or I myself a bit of a big fan of trying to leverage coffee for people that normally drink coffee or tea. But generally speaking, going out and, if your goal is to not drink as much, and then your reward is for some good behavior in some situation to go out and have more alcohol, as a reward, that's a little counterintuitive. Okay. So hopefully those 4 laws of behavior change are kind of helpful. Let's apply that in something actionable that you all will be doing in your assignment. And that's this idea of habit stacking. So we use kind of an existing established habit, something you already do, and we link it to a new habit for improved and easier adherence to the new habit. Okay, so we're just kind of swapping things out, and we can stack that multiple times through actions throughout our day. Although I always suggest, and I think all research supports this, is picking one goal at a time. Even though, again, like I said in another previous discussion, that sometimes some people like to take on a whole bunch of things, change a whole bunch of things in life all at once. It really is best to focus on one. So let's say we have this habit that I do every day. I wake up and I start my coffee machine. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak in a new habit that I want to achieve right after it. So my new habit is 2 minutes of meditation. So I do that right after I start my coffee machine. And so as soon as I do that, what does my day look like? Well, I start my coffee machine, I meditate for 2 minutes, then I have my coffee, and then I have breakfast. Whereas before, again, this habit wasn't there. I was just start the machine, drink my coffee when it's ready. Okay. I can also do something else with that where I can add in, let's say, or switch out if I have a less good habit, one that I don't want to support anymore, and engage in a new habit. So I can take this, maybe I just scroll my phone a whole bunch before I get into the shower. So what do? Well, instead of scrolling on my phone, now I'm going to do 10 minutes of this home workout plan while scrolling. So again, I'm trying to reward myself with something I'd normally already be doing, but I pair it up with something I find rewarding. But I'm also stacking that with habits I already do. I already regularly brush my teeth after I have breakfast in the morning, but now I'm also getting a workout for that same amount of time that I'd normally be doing nothing. Okay. And I'm rewarding myself right after with a warm shower, which I'd also already be doing. So again, the idea is as often as I can within my days, I have old habits that I kind of stack with a new habit that I want to work in. So my cue, the thing that starts and sets off all my new behaviors, I already do. I don't need to think about. It's just intuitive and happens. So that new behavior starts getting reinforced and rewarded. So I have that a new craving and a new response and reward to this behavior that I want to work in. Hopefully you can kind of see how that happens again in a bit of a little feedback. So here in this morning routine, I have an example of working in 2 new habits in a couple of slightly different ways. Okay. One way that we can do this, and hopefully you're seeing some parallels between SMART, goal setting, and habit stacking. So again, James Clear kind of integrates a lot of previous research from other areas and reframes it slightly different, is making a statement. So this is called a habit statement. And I kind of say, again, this is going back to my first habit that I want to stack. So after I start the coffee machine in the morning, I will meditate for 2 minutes, then drink my coffee. So here I've worked in my cue, I've worked in my response, and I've worked in my reward. Okay. Cue, coffee machine, response, meditation, reward, 2 minutes of drinking coffee. Or sorry, after 2 minutes of meditation, I drink coffee. And I can even work in more there. The more specific I get, the better, right? After I start the coffee machine in the morning, when I wake up at 7 a.m., I will immediately meditate for 2 minutes while listening to this playlist that I have already made, or this 2-minute song or sound or whatever, based on this app. Maybe the app tracks my habit for me. So I'm working in a lot of overlapping principles here. And then I drink my coffee, which I know is rewarding on multiple levels, right? And I already do these habits already, so introducing it that way. Okay, so again, this is helpful to find a baseline, really journal and identify current behaviors and actions to allow habit stacking to occur. And we've spoke about recording a baseline of actions and behaviors as far as wellness before starting to make changes a couple of different times already. Okay. When we were talking about environmental design, and this kind of goes back to the first cycle that I was chatting about and how to make things more attractive or less attractive. I already used this example. I think it was already top of mind. But essentially, we can do things in our environment to make a habit easier or harder. So this would be getting to the response portion of our habits. And again, it's just as easy as if I want to floss more, I'm going to leave my floss out where it's easily visible. So I can see it. That's there is a cue in the environment that will help me floss more. If I want to try to get rid of a bad habit, I'm trying to think of dental care, but I can't think of anything that's not good as far as dental care. It's pretty solid. Maybe there was something that I saw somewhere about biting nails and stuff. So people do that to fulfill this kind of craving for nerves and find the repetitive motion as calming. So to make that harder, potentially what I could do is maybe put some tape or something around my hands, or wear gloves or something that would make it less tempting to want to bite my nails when I'm nervous. Okay, this is an example of environmental changes for that. I've alluded at the next application area for this. It's the 2-minute rule. So we want to make whatever habit, new habit, or action or response that we're choosing to be as easily achievable and attainable as possible. So again, I mentioned this with the SMART goal. So this is more specific what I was trying to chat about. So the smaller and more manageable it is to initiate an action, the better. And this comes to the idea of inertia. Unless there's a lot of willpower and a lot of motivation to do something, every time we go to and engage in an activity, it's going to make it harder to do. So if we make the need for any willpower and motivation to be so tiny and so minuscule, we'll more easily and readily be able to complete the task, which will make it easier to achieve our goals and which will make it easier to form a habit. Again, habit forming leads to persistent automated behavior, and that's what we're after. So let's see, for example, I want to read more books. Maybe I have a goal to read 4 books in a year. It's for some bibliophiles, it's like a very small number, I know, but let's just say that's a goal. So I kind of have this, again, it's a bit not necessarily a smart goal, but it's a starting point. But in order to engage this and make it a habit and a regular habit to achieve, I start by saying, okay, well, maybe I'll just read 1 page every night as soon as I get into bed, after I've brushed my teeth and am settling in for the night. Okay, so this is great. 1 page is no matter how tired I am or what time I have to get up at, 1 page does not take a terribly long time to get through, and it's a good start to get over that inertia. The great part about this is you start with 1 page, but if you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, you end up reading more. Why? You're already engaged in the behavior, so that inertia continues on. Very similar with the example where I have someone, clients that find it hard to get to the gym on their own. I have them drive by the gym before they go home, whether they're actually going to work out that day or not. And sure enough, people think, well, I'm here, I might as well go in. Well, the goal was to just come and work out for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever very small amount of time you stay and agree upon. So, okay, 5 minutes. All right, I'm going to head in. Okay, but once you're there and you got your gym clothes on, you usually keep going. Okay, 5 minutes on the treadmill. Maybe I'll lift some weights, and then you do 10 minutes of that. And next thing you know, you have your half-hour workout in, and that's great. So again, this 2-minute rule is to make it like amazingly easy and accessible and attainable to do. And then on the days where you don't have time, you're like, it's not a failure. You're like, well, when I went to bed, I read that 1 page, time to go to sleep. Like, I gotta get up early tomorrow. Or, I drove past the gym, but I really gotta get home to make dinner for the family tonight, So, again, it allows for some success and consistency in habit formation, even a little bit. Okay, great. So to tie this all together, and again, I've mentioned it a few times now, but hopefully that just really highlights the importance here, is once we've managed to engage and get determination and automation of habits, these concepts and our practices of what we do in real life, our actions, our responses that accumulate through these very small atomic habits, these things that make us 1% better in a certain area of wellness every day that we engage in them, ultimately that builds up our identity of ourselves. So once we are able to find and visualize and picture who we want to be as a person, we can start building all these little habits to make us that person. Okay? So the benefit here is we start shifting our view and our perspective away from this one-time kind of smart goal, right? This one-time goal where we're like, okay, that's a goal. I did it. Great. And moving it more towards this idea of wellness, which is a continual process where we take habits, very small habits, and make very small changes regularly throughout our life. And not just, for the month of January, but, every day of the year. And it's just one thing, and it's attainable, and it's just persistent until it becomes automated. And then you just pick another area of wellness and move there. Okay. So again, we integrate these actions of these habits into who we label and identify ourselves as who we want to be. And that makes everything stick for the long term. We're really engaging in lifelong wellness here. So how do we do that? Well, I mentioned you visualize who you want to be. You create these habits that align with that person, that visualized person. As we're going through our kind of process of forming habits, we see how these habits that we're taking a part in just a little bit every day, how that leads us to this greater vision of ourselves and who we want to be. And over time, what happens is and people maybe don't see it this way, but just by engaging in an activity, this habit, for 5 minutes a day, let's say, by acting that way, you are the person that you're hoping you become. And so, and again, people don't always see it this way. Oh yeah, I've just been like exercising 5 minutes a day for a month and a half now, but I'm not really like a fitness person. People kind of have these labels on themselves. So being able to reflect and reframe people's perspectives on realizing that just by engaging in that activity even a little bit, you are the person that you're wanting to be, And I think that's something as like a healthcare professional, in particular in the fitness industry, is really good to help people recognize and realize, because they won't typically do that on their own. And I think the most important part to all of this is being able to reframe your perception that, not reframe, but to view and reflect on your own actions and behaviors, and realizing that this habit building is not a perfect thing. A lot of us will have moments or times where we don't have a continuous streak going. We miss the behavior a couple of days and then can get back into it, right? And that's fine. And that this is a learning process, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to fail. My analogy here often is, just because you drop your phone doesn't mean you have to stomp on it and break it, right? Like if there's a little crack in the screen, doesn't mean you have to just completely abandon it, leave your phone on the ground. That's it. It's ruined. It's over. We can still pick it up, continue on, and continue building on our habits, right? So having self-compassion and being patient and kind and flexible with yourself is really important. Okay. It's a little bit of a longer section here, but some really important stuff. Really great information, especially for your assignment, but just life and how, if you're hoping to incorporate new behaviors and actions into your life, that looking at them as habit building and using some of the tips and ideas here to apply to be able to achieve that is good. And hopefully you can take some of this knowledge and help apply it for clients and patients in the future. Okay, that's it for this section. We got one more shorter section right at the end as the last lecture, and yeah, I'll see you at that video.